Hey guys, I'm Cameron, and if you don't know who I am, I coach alongside Andy in the coaching group that we run, and I occasionally come on this channel to discuss certain topics. Today I want to talk about sexual anxiety. Now this is not performance anxiety that I'm meaning to talk about. This is more a general anxiety that you might have towards sex, and this may be an obstacle that prevents you from living and enjoying the sex life that you want. In my personal experience, it manifested, especially in my younger years, as essentially being afraid to do anything with women. I didn't even properly kiss a girl, make out with a girl until I was 22, which is also the year that I lost my virginity at last, after many years of trying. I think sexual anxiety can really build up in late bloomers, guys that come to their dating lives later on, and is often the cause as to why we didn't start having an active sex life earlier. I recently wrote an ebook with Andy that maps out how to meet women and how to have sex with them, and it will probably be available down below. It became specifically aimed at the sexually inexperienced, and especially virgins. I discovered this as I wrote it. It wasn't originally meant to be like this. It was just me writing down, okay, what are the steps? In 2023, in the modern era, how does a guy get from zero to having sex with a girl? But as I wrote it, it became more and more obvious that my main motivation was helping the guys that were in my position when I was a lot younger, when I was struggling to make sense of why I was so anxious and, scared to accelerate things with any of the girls that I was interested in. Not just scared to go after them, but also when I ended up in situations where I could have had sex, where it could have gone somewhere physically, I, in a couple of instances, literally ran away. If you were looking, by the way, for stuff about erectile dysfunction and performance anxiety, there's a really good interview that Andy did with Ed. It's actually the part 2 of the interviews he did with Ed, where he talks about that. So if you were looking for that when you found this video, go there. I'll let Andy link it down below. But from now on, I'm just going to be talking about the sexual anxiety that I faced when I was younger. And really, even after I started having sex, this anxiety that I had built up, this, I guess, to a certain degree, trauma, or at least experience that I had built up and fear I had built up around certain things to do with women, that did continue to haunt me to a degree as I moved into my dating life proper. We'll have a little chat though. I want to keep this fairly relaxed and, conversational. It's about, a topic that, triggering is the wrong word, a topic that might hit home to a few guys who watch this. Definitely there's lots of guys in the community, I think, who built up very very underdeveloped psychological relationships with sex, with the opposite sex. And I'm just going to talk through my earlier experiences and how I worked through them, whether or not, if someone else is out there and they see this and maybe they download the ebook, maybe they won't have such a bumpy, long, drawn-out road that I had because, they have the steps now. And we'll get into that in a second as to, why I had the sexual anxiety. But a big part of it was I didn't know what I was fucking doing. And my ebook is, what would I have sent back to myself, back in, what would it be, like 2014? No, even then, 2012, 2013, when I was at college. What would I have thrown back through a wormhole to myself to be like, hey, it's all right. These are just the steps you're going to have to go through. This is what you're going to have to contend with your anxiety. It's all going to be okay. But no, I don't get to do that. But what I can do is, help guys now. So let's go over my favorite stories. Andy already said one of them in the ebook launch video, I believe, where he told the story of the girl that slept in my bed and I didn't join her. So this was in college, first year. And instead of joining her, I let her fall asleep and then opened my laptop and started playing Football Manager for 6 hours until she woke up again and left. That's probably the strongest manifestation of my sexual anxiety, because she was like, there was a lot of run up before that as well. Like, she invited herself over to my flat. We'd both been on nights out. We were both a little bit drunk, but also sobering up. We made like a frozen pizza together, and she marched herself down to my room and then started fucking about in my room while I wasn't there. It was like, she actually went to my room ahead of me, as in like, I am going to be here. And then she started fucking around with my dumbbell weight sets and just kind of generally joking around, playing around. And then she got under the covers into my bed. And I didn't join her. I sat down at my desk, just like continuing to talk to her until eventually she just got tired and started went to sleep basically. And I opened my laptop and started playing Football Manager for the next 5 to 6 hours until she woke up. And then she woke up and then she left. And that was it. I didn't have a fucking clue what to do. That was the reason. The reason that I was obviously scared of like, oh, what's she going to say when she realizes I don't know what I'm doing. I was obviously a virgin at the time. I said I hadn't kissed a girl really, making out with a girl at this point. So there was so much like, it was like too much at once. Because like all the experience I felt like I should have had at like high school, I felt embarrassed that I didn't have it. Like I didn't know how to make out. Like I didn't know how to escalate girls to sex. I didn't know really how to talk to them about the situation in a way that I thought was like cool and not cringy. So like communication, general physical know-how, just like a general physical experience of having been in those situations before, or at least things that were similar to that maybe I felt like I should have had at high school. And I had a lot of shame. I'm calling it high school for the Americans, but we would have just called it secondary school. But you know, the shame that I didn't have that. I didn't feel comfortable enough telling someone that I didn't have that. And all of that came to a head, and it led to me literally waiting until a girl had left the bed. It's really embarrassing looking back on it. College I had a few of these stories in college. There was another one where I was on a bar crawl with a couple of the flats who were next door to us, and one of the girls was like super like hovering around me all night. She was really hot as well. All of my housemates were like, yeah, you got to try with her. She's clearly into you. Her friends were telling me that she was into me. And then when it came to like make out with her, I just didn't have like the physical experience of what to do. I had no idea. And I didn't know that you can be shit at this stuff. It's like the one thing I would send back. Like Andy has the first article he ever wrote was like, give yourself permission to suck. Letting yourself not be amazing at stuff first time round. Letting yourself maybe disappoint people with like kind of like your performance in this stuff, and you know, not being smooth, not being amazing at stuff. Like why would you be amazing at something the first time you do it? And you can't be good at something until you've done it repeatedly. So you've got to have those first few sucky occasions out of the way. And I never had that internalized. So there's just like the same kind of situation where a girl is laying it on a plate for me, and I didn't run away from this one, but like that's coming up. What I did instead was I like turned my head like because I didn't know what to do when she tried to kiss me. She kind of put her mouth forward and like with like the invitation to come on. It wasn't like she like trying to make out with me like forcibly. We proceeded to the next bar, and she just got with another guy, which will happen to you on nights out if you don't take your opportunities. Because you know, girls, when they're interested in, you know, bringing a guy home in that situation, she will very quickly, if you decline her, move on to someone else. So yeah, you got to take your shots while you have them, you know. And at that stage, I just didn't have the ability to overcome this anxiety and take shots. I had another couple of instances written down. In my second year of college, I was lucky enough in my second year of college to make friends with guys who were more like friendly to me. They were cooler. I liked them better as people. And the unfortunate side of that was like I was still too ashamed to tell them that I was a virgin, that I was inexperienced. And this manifested in a weird way where they would see me interact with girls, and then they would kind of know that like something was up, like I was like afraid or something, or I didn't know what to do. And they would see these occasions. And the first one happened in like the first week when I met all of them. We were in a club and we were in the smoking area, and this girl literally just sat on my lap. She like came over, and the first move she pulls is just to sit on my lap. And once again, I just refused to make out with her because I was looking at her as I wasn't really hugely into her, but I was like drunk. I probably would have done it if I didn't have like the immediate rush of anxiety and fear, like, oh shit, what do I do? Then there was another situation very similar in a club where a girl like came up to me. This was like 3 or 4 weeks later, and the girl comes up to me and like puts her arms around me, and I like move her to the side and like run to the bathrooms, the restrooms. And that was probably the other big occasion I have in my memory. And then like after this, like there's a few girls who I was like friends with at college, like in seminar groups and in lecture groups. And we would arrange to meet up and like study together, just like one-on-one. One girl in particular who would end up being the girl I lost my virginity to like 3 years later, because we like met up again. And I reached a point where I wasn't as scared anymore, but it took me, as you can see, took me another 2 to 3 years after this. But yeah, I had 3 or 4 girls where they clearly showed interest in like getting to know me, hang out with me alone, like come to my room and study with me and stuff like that. And we were just, a girl was like, oh yeah, we'll study. And then we just got drunk in my room together. Again, I didn't make any moves or do anything. And then afterwards, she like stopped really wanting to talk to me or hang out with me. And looking back, pretty clear that I didn't read signals or do anything. So that's a big point, actually. With that girl in particular, the driving thing was like, what if I've read this signal wrong and I do something and she's like super offended by it? That was a big one. And that's like, I think that's what stops a lot of guys with like approach anxiety, especially in social situations. You're like terrified of the rejection way more in a situation where you already know the girl. And I've tried to make that clear when I talk to guys before. Like I personally anyway, and maybe this doesn't apply to all guys, I find social situations to be the scariest to approach in still to this day because of how much of this, like all of my previous experience in like social gaming before like I had, started doing cold approach and became a lot more fearless and started having loads of success in online dating like I mostly do now. I had these previous experiences in social situations of not taking my chances and of because I was so terrified that it would go poorly and there would be social ramifications. That was another huge part of my anxiety. And when all the girls you're meeting are in these social situations where you have this huge amount of anxiety and fear built up around what could possibly, like in your mind, what could go wrong is terrifying. And that's kind of like where I think most of the anxiety came from. I was building it up massively in my head. I don't think it was until I started cold approaching and realizing nothing really goes wrong, even in the most terrifying situations. And I didn't start cold approaching until I was 24, 25. So between 18 and 25, and even before that, at high school, it was just pure like, I would never do anything in like a social situation. I would never take my shots, make my moves with girls because of how terrified I was of things going wrong. Even when I knew like I'd had sex and I'd had a girlfriend and I'd had certain things, like I'd had a lot of more sexual experience, because by the time I started cold approaching, I think I had been with 8 or 9 girls, and I'd still had all of this anxiety built up from like years of just like thinking that everything's going to go terribly wrong if I make a move. Like that is it's not approach anxiety necessarily, because it's like that's cold approach. This is like the anxiety you feel with girls you already know, that level of anxiety. For me, that was always, that's always been built up and way more terrifying. And it comes from these years of experiencing paralyzing sexual anxiety. Do I have anything? That went in a really weird direction, this one. I didn't expect it to go in this direction where I kind of came up with ideas on the fly as I came through. I feel like I've just like therapized, that's not a word, is it? I've given myself therapy by doing this video because I just came up with some stuff where I'm like, oh yeah, that is why it was. A lot of it was built up on the social connections, and a lot of it was also my friends would see me making, like when the girls came up to me and stuff, when that happened, when like at college, and when they were like encouraging me to get on girls, it was always within their eye line, within people were watching. And it was actually Andy that got me over the idea of like people seeing you like making out, people seeing you dancing with a girl, people seeing you like being with a girl, because he started doing like cold approaches in front of like in public, and I was like, I'm terrified of people overhearing, of people seeing. And he just went up and approached some girls. And he was like, watch the people around. Nobody cares. Like no one is looking at you. Even if you're out there like talking to a girl, cold approaching a girl, no one is looking at you. And that really helped me realize that like, yeah, my friends would have seen, but the limit to which they care is quite low. You care so much. If your friends see you get embarrassed with a girl, like you care about that so much that your friends are going to barely remember it. Like you don't rank, even if they're your best friends, you still don't rank high enough. And even if it's like a joke, you know what I mean? We'll do the work on it. You'll get over it if it becomes like a serious joke. None of these situations that ever went like weird for me or were like in front of these guys ever really mattered in our relationship. You know what I mean? But in my mind, it was like, oh my God, I've like lost, like I'm embarrassed. Like I've lost social standing with my best mates. Like, no, it's like just not how, it took me a while to realize it, but like, they want you to be happy. Like your good friends anyway, they want you to be happy. It doesn't matter if they see you like striking out with a girl or they see you have like, I can't even use this term, but bad riz. They see you have bad riz with someone. I don't know. Hello, fellow kids, I also use your terms. This is rambling off now. Sexual anxiety. I encourage you all to buy the ebook. If you are someone like me who part of why they had so much anxiety is they didn't know what to do. I think if you don't know what to do, having an ebook that literally rolls out the steps, and like the steps are not hard to follow. I was talking to Andy before we released the ebook, and I was like, nothing we teach requires a high amount of skill. It more requires you to be a little bit courageous and give yourself permission to suck and give yourself permission just to try things. Like everything in the ebook, anyone could to do every step in that ebook. We're not expecting high level game mastery from you in the way that some pickup artists are like, yeah, you use all these words in this correct order and you'll get the... No, it doesn't work like that for us the way we do it. We just give you very basic steps, which pretty much any guy can do. And based on the fact the human population hasn't died off yet due to lack of procreation, any man in history can get laid from what it seems like, or at least most of us can. So these steps are very simple and they'll give you a cheat sheet, essentially, if you have this ebook, and it's pay whatever you can afford. So a link down below, you can pay as little as $1 for it. And the other thing is, we also, Andy says we're holding your hand through it, or when we write out about like the anxiety, and I did a whole section about hurdles, and I split it into knowledge hurdles and fear hurdles. And this chapter very much lays out what I've been talking about, whereas there is a knowledge gap, but there's also, just an anxiety gap as well. And that sexual anxiety, is something you can overcome with the right amount of knowledge, the right amount of permission, and the right amount of just sucking it up and doing what you're frightened to do. Because it's going to come to the head at some point. I did eventually, after several years of baby steps, get to a point where I could lose my virginity and end up forming a relationship. Not with the girl I lost my virginity to. A little bit after that, I ended up forming my first relationship. And I was 22, and it took me a while, but I did get there. And anyone who's watching this, it won't take you... What is that? It won't take you 5 years, 18 to 20, no, that's 4 years. Fuck, my maths sucks. I didn't do maths at college, I did history. But yeah, it won't take you that long. If you have the knowledge, if you have our help, if you have our understanding of how anxiety can be managed, fear can be managed, you can get through it as well. So I encourage you to check out the book. It's pay whatever you can afford, like I said. So you can get it for $1. Link in the description below. Peace out, and I'll see you next time.